Ahoy! The Eternal Frost full patch notes are out and they come with some pretty significant changes, so let's look at them. And also, the patch for this has unfortunately been delayed. They have an issue that they are unable to fix at the moment, so we don't have an update on when it will actually come out. We just know that they will deliver it as soon as possible. It's kind of ironic that they delayed this season to polish out, or rather, they didn't delay the season, but some content in the season to polish out more bugs, and then still have to delay the season itself because of a bug, but it is what it is. We'll talk about what we have in terms of upcoming changes. So first we have the new season story, you are probably aware of that already, as well as the new season pass. We have the new expedition, Glacial Tarn, which I really like. I think that's pretty decent. They've made some changes to that, added some mobs in there, so that should be a little bit better overall as well. We have 8 new artifacts, and we have the Winter Convergence Festival returning, but with slightly changed rewards. I already talked about that in a separate video, so that's very much worth doing, and it's also a little bit easier to farm the stuff from that. And then in future updates, so before the next season, but not with the start of the season, we'll have the cross-world expeditions with the improved group finder. We have some pretty cool art here. And then we have a ton of changes in general, so let's go through them. First, we have a few general fixes that don't really affect as much. Lava will now kill players at a slightly higher level than previously to stop players from exploiting new mechanics. I think this may be relevant in Forge potentially, but kind of annoying in that regard. It kind of takes away one of the skips if it's the case. We have some other notable fixes here for graphical issues with flashes, where your screen would suddenly flash, and various glyphs not appearing in the right location so you can progress. Then we also have a bunch of quest fixes here. If you are affected by any of these, then you can see them here. I'm not gonna go through all of them separately. But the next change here is the first big one. This one we already had on the PTR. You can now move at the same speed in all directions when not sprinting. This means, for example, when you are slowed from any attack, like the melee slow, or also while you're blocking. The maximum non-sprint move speed is also increased to 4 meters per second, and the animation has been updated along with that. So this is gonna have major impact in PvE and PvP, and it's something that shouldn't be undervalued because it doesn't sound that big by itself, I think, but when you consider where this plays into things, it's very much relevant. Then there are some fixes to mutations, and also Sir Loth and the caster will be pushed by Windchill. That would actually have been hilarious if it made it into the game. That's the final boss in the new expedition. And he also gets a Fortify status effect during the Ice Elemental Empower phase. This is very important. And they also here restructured the health thresholds for Sir Loth to increase the fight duration during the Ice Elemental Empower phase. So basically, you could cheese this boss very, very easily by ignoring all of the mechanics and just focusing on the boss, because then he would get empowered, but the empower wouldn't matter all that much, and it would basically make the whole fight kind of brainless. You would kind of just ignore the mechanics, and that, I think, will be addressed through this Fortify here and through these other changes. So we will see how that feels now on the live client, but I'm expecting it to feel a lot better overall. Now we have a bunch of combat changes. Acid damage has been added to elemental damage type. That actually already happened, apparently, according to the old patch notes. Maybe it didn't happen, but now it actually happened. I'm not sure, but anyways. And this is also relevant for Shanation specifically, so that you can actually reduce that damage too. And then there's certain adjustments surrounding that. Also reduce the frequency of status effects flyout to help highlight more important ones. I think that's very useful because it's very hard to keep track of your status effect, especially in PvP, because it's just very cluttered. So I'm wondering how exactly they will do that to make it efficient, but I think it's definitely a good start. I would like some form of like highlight for particularly important debuffs or something. That would be great, or the option to place them somewhere else manually. Some bugs with mounts here. There's gonna be a bunch of fixes with mounts. And also removed unintended stagger that was present on the deactivation of Primal Fury. So this is pretty big because you could kind of combo with Primal Fury, like opening with the stagger from the activation, then like doing a quick swing maybe, and then immediately deactivating it for another stagger. So you could combo that into some pretty good damage potential, and that's going to be nerfed, which I think is good insofar that it, for example, gives Dark Ascent more of a different identity from Primal Fury, where you have the damage on drop down. And yeah, I think it wasn't really necessary to have the double stagger anyways. It made it a bit too potent in some ways, while it still wasn't particularly great in some others, so yeah. Then we have a bunch of block and attack changes. So you can now hold block and aim while the weapon is sheathed to trigger aim or block, so you immediately pull out the weapon and block or aim, which I think is great. The heavy buffer windows have been updated to make triggering back-to-back heavy attacks more consistent. This is very annoying on certain weapons when you sometimes just not do the secondary attack when you do the heavy attack input, so great improvement there. Added functionality that will reduce block stamina damage for a short duration after blocking an attack to help scale stamina damage taken in group fights. I think this is fantastic. This could have been like the first change they ever did to blocking. Honestly, maybe it needs some more coding. So basically, if you get hit once, then afterwards you take a little bit less stamina damage for a while, and that should be great for especially non-shield blocking. Obviously, it helps shields too. The block break reaction duration has been reduced from 30 to 15 frames. I already said this before, like they're buffing blocking a lot, and they might eventually end up going too far. We'll see if it's this one, but the block break thing is pretty big, I think. In my opinion, it is anyways. There's not that much punish for just holding block, basically. Block stability and stamina damage values have been changed. So various weapons had adjustments. Some have higher block stability now, especially the ones that previously had lower ones. The ones with higher stamina base damage had their stamina base damage slightly reduced. And then attacks whose stamina damage coefficients were much higher than average have been reduced as well. So it's more of a consistent incoming damage rather than you getting chunked all of a sudden by a damage that is intended to do insanely high stamina damage, like armor break or vault kick, like just attacks that are just meant to break stamina. Those will do a little less, but everything else will do a little bit more, so it's a bit more consistent in how much stamina damage you can expect. The stamina damage coefficients across all melee weapon heavy attacks were also unified in that regard, so I'm sure that will nerf, for example, the Warhammer and will buff certain other weapons in return. Hatchet, for example, I think does have relatively low stamina damage at the moment on a heavy attack, so it's going to be interesting what the end result here is. And then there's some other sheath mechanics here that were fixed, that were improved, that are not that major in comparison. Then the consumable changes here are basically a result of what's happening with healing as well and everything. The consumable heal mod PvP adjustments has been removed, so you're not getting a consumable healing reduction in PvP anymore. They heal the normal amount. And the focus potion, I think this is new after PTR, is now getting a 15 seconds cooldown on par with mana potions. This is because people were using the focus potion to get the toast effect, like the empowering toast and fortifying toast, basically without any downtime. When it comes to the artifacts, we also have a couple changes. So we have an issue with Odo not properly working with stunned targets before, but again, I don't think that's going to make it any better. Endless Thirst has been updated in various ways. The cooldown on the tooltip was actually wrong, and then they changed it again, blah, blah, blah. I think Endless Thirst, all in all, will be better because it affects more consumables now. But if it's enough to justify using it is another question. We don't know what the new perks on it will be. It sounded like they were going to change some of the perks on it as well, which I don't think we have seen yet. The strike damage conversion has been removed from the Inferno Fire Staff artifact and the Life Taker Void Gauntlet. They'll both deal default damage type or void fire respectively. Unfortunately, certain other issues with that were not fixed unless they were fixed since PDR, with the dot damage still not scaling properly. That could be interesting if that is fixed, especially Inferno has some pretty strong perks. I think the range was also increased to like pretty much double. So yeah, I think these... I mean, Life Taker was already good anyways, it's just an offhand, but I think Inferno especially could be interesting in that regard. I think it's a bit unfortunate they're removing the strike range damage. I thought that was a cool, unique thing that's not counter-built as much, but it was also not scaling well, so yeah, wins and losses kind of there at the same time, I suppose. So there's been some update on the tooltips as well, and the Ankh artifact heal mod decreases lifesteal healing as well now, so it gives a bigger trade-off and creates additional differences between that and the Blood Drinker ring. On the other hand, the Blood Drinker artifact gets a 5% bonus to all lifesteal while active. Fixed an issue that caused the Void Gauntlet artifact Life Taker to not trigger properly for all ranged attacks as well. And then based on the PTR, they've done some more changes. The first one is one that was reported by me, and I feel like that's not the whole thing. So they fixed some issues that caused players with the unmoved artifact to still be pulled by players using Scorpion Sting. However, there were various inconsistencies in when the unmoved is actually applied. I don't know. This may be partially due to ping. That maybe like due to the higher ping, it took longer to check back with the server if I have unmoved, and that's why I got rubber banded a lot. Like there were a lot of things that moved me and then reset my position afterwards, which honestly felt worse than just being pushed away. And also it seemed like it did not affect staggers, and there's no mention of that here at all. I think, once again, the unmoved potential entirely hinges on staggers. I think it's not affecting Graphwell pulse either, if I recall correctly, which would also be like a make or break thing, right? If this can prevent you from being pulled by Graphwells in wars, that would obviously be completely, well, I would say overpowered, honestly, but if that's not the case, I see limited uses if it doesn't also counter staggers. So we'll have to see how effective this really ends up being. And then the power of Koya's knee guards was reduced from 33% to 20% against all range damage. So I misunderstood this already. It was weirdly said. David talked about this and he said that, I think the new value is 10% or something along those lines. So what he meant, or maybe they changed their mind about it, was not that the new value is just 10% reduction for both, but it's 10% less than beforehand. So it's 20% reduction for both elemental and physical ranged attacks. And I think with 10%, it would have ended up weaker than I initially thought. I think, I didn't get the chance to test it, obviously, but I think it would have been struggling in comparison to featherweight. Now, with the new mitigation, I will definitely have to do new tests, but I cannot imagine that this 20% mitigation against both is not going to have use cases. I feel like this is going to be effective, at least in some places. Again, I'll have to look into this more after the patch when we have the actual values, the other perks and all that. But this sounds like a lot to me. Just a raw reduction of 20% against all range damage that is difficult for that not to be good to some degree. Let's put it like that. Or if that's still not good, then maybe it'll end up resulting in a nerf of featherweight. So we'll see about that. And then we have the gem changes, always affecting the rune glasses as well. Yada yada. But we have a ton of gem changes. So first of all, we have the Onyx Brash effect. Reduce the health requirement from 100% to 70% and reduce the health effects from a range from 15 to 30 to 9 to 18, since it will have higher uptime. I think that is already very interesting, and I think with another change that we'll get to a little bit later, this could especially make this interesting for PvE speedruns, where you run a build that has Onyx on one weapon and then switches to Emerald later in the fight. But I also think that comparatively this is not the strongest one after these changes, because Emerald is right underneath it. Increase the target health requirement from below 30% to 50%. Reduce the effects from a range of 15% to 30% to a range of 7 to 16%, since it will have higher uptime. Additionally, added a 1 to 5% bonus healing on targets below 50% health, so you can also use this as a healer now. I believe this will be the most interesting gem in the next patch. I've already put that out as a trading tip on my Patreon. Feel free to support me there if you want to get those tips early as well. Quite a while ago, so people stocked up. This one I think is just extremely potent. I think there's a lot of value in dealing damage when it matters the most. Obviously, it's harder to get to the threshold first, but to secure the kill, I think this is very, very strong. And depending on the playstyle and build, I would prefer this to Opal in PvP. Not for everyone, not for all situations. Obviously, if you're somebody who's like mainly opening the fight, engaging, you're not getting as much value out of that. But especially to kill healers or something like that, like in the most crucial moments, I think these are very, very valuable. So I think Emerald is definitely one to look out for next patch, and one of the main interesting ones. We have Exhilarate, the Moonstone, rework the bonus damage while all abilities are on cooldown, and update the values to be 11 to 20%. I think this is incredibly niche, because on most weapons you have an ability up most of the time, and after that you're not dealing that much damage. You're basically just using basic attacks at that point, whatever that is for you. Maybe something like the Hatchet could make use of this potentially, but then also not really, I think. I'm not sure, especially because I think during Berserk it would not count as on cooldown. So yeah, I don't really know. This one is a bit odd to me. Then we have Retaliate, the Jasper. Updated the functionality to be after blocking or taking a hit, and increase the duration to 5 seconds, allowing up to 3 stacks, and reduce the individual stack values from a range from 6 to 20 previously to now range from 3 to 8 with a 24% maximum. Overall, this is definitely a buff, especially including the blocking aspect here. This is the only gem that is running as Empower. So if you're running an Empower build, you're running the risk of Empower capping, then this is not ideal. So for Great Axes, for example, this might still not be the best choice for wars, but I think in general, Jasper will gain some value for wars. I think Jasper's kind of like, it's always been a gem that looks like it's meant to be used in wars, but where you're just constantly getting hit by like stray damage from something, but just never quite got there. And I think this may be the changes that actually allow it to get there, depending on the weapon. Again, if you're Empower capped, then it won't really matter as much. And that's the problem, right? Like, you have to have a weapon that doesn't get close to Empower cap even, or you get weakened a lot to have like no issue with this 24% maximum. Then we have Gambit, the Opal, by far the most used gem. Reduce the damage values from a range from 6 to 15% to a range from 4 to 12% while stamina is not full. I think this nerf in combination with the other buffs means we'll still see Opal, absolutely, but I think we'll see less of it depending on the situation where it's used. The Carnelian got a new function, the Calming effect specifically, so if you have it on armor, that increases your damage by 0.5 to 2% per taunted foes per gem slotted, which is definitely an interesting thing for speedrunners. If you have, a tank that's very efficiently taunting targets, then you could get a lot of extra damage out of this, obviously at the risk of taking more damage, because you can't slot any normal elemental gems in return. You're gonna slot these ones, so a risk worth taking if you want to be the fastest, I suppose, but definitely not easy to play with. And then we have the Empowered Sapphire, updated the scaling from int to focus, so we have an additional gem that scales off focus now, which is gonna be interesting. I don't know if it's gonna be changed for the Flail, because the Flail couldn't slot focus gems previously, and I think it still wasn't possible on the PTR with Sapphire. We'll see if that maybe is something that is possible on live. Then we have the conversion gem change overall. So conversion gems will now consistently convert 50% of the weapon damage to the element associated with the gems regardless of the tier. But it will now scale all of the weapons damage to int and focus if those attributes are higher than the base weapons attribute. So here are the conversion values. So if you have a tier 2 gem, there's a 50% conversion to elemental damage at 45% scaling off of int or 35% scaling off of focus. This effectively means that tier 2 gems will have significantly less value in various scenarios. I think you can no longer effectively slot a tier 2 gem in an elemental weapon like a fire staff, for example. I think that would just result in lower damage output in any scenario, as far as I understand it anyways. And yeah, I think there's still potentially some niche scenarios where you can utilize this, but overall the real value for most people is going to be down here. 50% conversion to element at 75% scaling off of int or 65% scaling off of focus. So 75% scaling is the nerf value since PTR, and then the Runeglass version is also further reduced. So if you're running Runeglass, it's 65% in scaling, 55% of a focus, which begs the question if you would even want to slot a Runeglass on these. Again, depending on the situation. I think many int gems will just be ran at a non-int split still. There's no harm in that inherently. You can run a dex build with like 150 int and you will not get this conversion scaling because you're running more dex than int, and you'll be fine. But in int builds, the reason why they nerfed this down so much is because you could basically get away with running a Warhammer with an int gem and a Great Axe with an int gem and get at least almost the same, if not under certain circumstances, more damage than running strength. You could just run that with int, especially if you have like one weapon with a split attribute, like a dex or something. You could just put the int gem instead, and it would work better. And in the context of that, we'll get that later, they also nerfed one of the int perks. So yeah, there is a bit of a fine-tuning happening here. I think there will still be use cases for this. I'll have to test around more, but obviously it's not going to be as oppressive. You're going to have some sort of punish for going for an int gem. Items like the Abyss will keep more value, and it's unlikely, I would say at this point, that somebody is going to go for double int split unless you're using at least one weapon that scales partially with int. And the only scenario where I could imagine this being more of interest is something like, say somebody wants to run a musket with a warhammer. Well, musket is a bad idea. A bow with a warhammer, right? And they do want to be able to do significant damage both in melee and in range. Then they would maybe run int gem on both, so that they would be having like some sort of mutual scaling between them, because otherwise you have zero mutual scaling between them, and you just accept that you just have 75% scaling and get some extra damage off of other perks that you grab at like 50 points or something. That's why I could see it being used a bit, but I think it's still gonna remain niche, though it does make for a good fun meme builds then. And these stats will not dual scale, so if the replacement attribute is higher, it'll override the base weapon scaling. So again, it's either int or whatever other stat you have. They also removed the incompatible elemental perk restriction from gems. They can now be slotted into perks that have different elemental types, which is a nice bonus. Flail gets a bunch of fixes. Arcane Smite especially, one set that is can like offset when you spin around. Really, we've gone through these changes before. Mainly the haste bug is fixed, and also one of the passives didn't work properly. And some other fixes came recently, so like the various main bugs that were affecting the Flail are fixed. Let's keep it short here. With the headshot, there's also a fix here for the final charge up before the last attack in the attack chain to incorrectly time the transitions to the light, uncharged heavy, and charged heavy attacks. For the Ice Gauntlet, the update Ultimate Chill description has been updated to state that Ice Pylon does not chill targets, and fix an issue that caused the health values for Ice Pylon and Tomb to appear 0 in the Mastery tooltips. The Musket gets some fixes. One was that you end up reloading after swapping from the blunderbuss during rapid firing. Another one was that Power Shot and Powder Burn would become disabled after entering or exiting instances. The Lifestaff gets a little bit more than just fixes. So the Lifestaff Sacred Ground upgrade Anointed Heal mod is no longer affecting consumables or lifesteal healing. In my opinion, I think this is still not touching the root of it. I think the root of it is really that the healing itself is increased, but it's definitely impactful in so far that if a healer is standing in their own sacred and then they pot, they will heal for less. Or if they're running like Void Gauntlet and life stealing with that, that's also going to heal for a little less. I don't think that's the main source of healing. Very, very cautious with this, but I guess it's like a first glance to see where things go, especially in combination with the recent plague changes. We'll just see where things settle after that. They also updated the Lifestaff's Sacred Protection passive to not affect consumables or lifesteal healing, and buffed its value from 5% to 10% to offset that. So again, not really much of a loss there, depending on the situation. You might just get more healing even. Fixed an issue where disabling then re-enabling target healing in the option menus did not actually re-enable it. Pressing targeted healing hotkeys when not mapped to a valid member in your group will now not enter targeted healing. And healing option freeform camera has been removed to camera follows locked target. On the Void Gauntlet, we have a fix that caused the lifesteal from Essence Rupture to not trigger on every hit. Again, I thought this might be intentional. I thought this was like an intentional 1 second internal cooldown. Apparently it's not, and this was an issue that they wanted to fix. Blunderbuss had an issue that caused Claw Shot not to connect to a target. And then we have a pretty, I would say, like, for me personally, annoying change to Great Axe. So fix an issue that caused Surrounded to not consistently function as expected. Surrounded, by the way, is not the perk that gives you more damage just for being near enemies. That is a center of attention. but rather Surrounded is the last perk of Whirlwind. This is the one that currently gives Whirlwind 30% extra damage when you have 3 or more enemies around you, but again, it wasn't even functioning as expected. Now they changed this, so instead of the 3 targets, it's now if 3 or more targets are around the player, gain a 15% damage increase per target with a maximum of 5 targets. In other words, you can have a 15% increase with 3 targets, 30% with 4 targets, or a 45% with 5 targets. I am not 100% sure about this, but relatively certain that this is not an empower. I think this is just a base damage increase to the ability. And I liked this perk. And I liked it in arenas in particular, where you have 3 enemies, and if they all clump up, you use this ability and they get punished for it. And the range, I mean, this could be part of the bug here, the not consistently functioning, but the range on this is actually fairly short. So this being nerfed feels rather rough, because it's a buff for a situation like wars when you have 5 people around you. But I'm also not really sure how realistic that even is in wars, again, because of how small the radius seems to be for Surrounded. I don't know 100% how big it is, because it's really hard to find out, especially since it seems to be bugged. So it's very hard to tell what's going on there. But I don't know if this will actually often end up really being this 45% increase in wars. If yes, then I guess it has value in wars. If not, then an ability was nerfed here that doesn't really do anything overly OP or anything like. So it's already like a niche ability that's not necessarily easy to use effectively and has a very long cooldown. So I don't really know what the direction is. Maybe they saw my video and they're like, oh, he's doing too much damage with Whirlwind. So I don't know what happened. And then updated charge upgrade tips on damage increases based on time in charge for clarity. Okay, so we just know more exactly how it will work. We got some notable perks. So fix an issue that costs the omnidirectional evade perk to not apply the empower status effect. So that's usable again. Fix an issue that caused various perk status effects, could stack the duration on reapplication. This is relevant for certain raid compositions, like for example, how many spears you need to run for Sandworm and so on. So this can matter to some degree. Adjusted tooltips for perks that decrease the duration of status effects to indicate that they affect the base duration to help their functionality. Fix an issue that caused the Leeching Flurries perk tooltip not to show the correct value. Then we have economy changes, where we have a great one first up. I think this one is absolutely fantastic. So, based on player feedback, players can now craft a new cache at a Gypsum kiln. This cache will cost 20 Gypsum orbs and grant the player 1,500 gold and 250 dark matter upon opening. One cache can be crafted per week, and caches are bind on pickup. I think this is great. I think Gypsum orbs were initially, before the new update, or like before the new expansion, in a weird place, sure, but they had a purpose. They had a purpose to you do various activities in the game that you choose. You get rewarded with Gypsum orbs, and then you can use those to get various rewards like umbral shards or whatever you want. And this is essentially replacing that, and it's also giving you some gold, with currently just too many gold sinks being in the game. And it's also something that is accessible for anyone, for casual players as well as for sweats. You have a 1 week cooldown and you get this amount. So it's not going to break the economy, I believe, if players have 1,500 extra gold. But for someone who only logs in on the weekend, getting 1,500 gold is nice. And with that gold being like used more often, like, you know, the casual weekend players will log in, get their gold, and of course they will also spend some of it. And that will result in the grinders also ending up with more gold, because whatever they're trying to sell, whatever they did in the other time, will sell for more gold. So I think this is just a win-win. I like this approach, and obviously they can adjust the values here if needed. They also raised the Azoth cap from 1,000 to 2,500. Flint is now in the Stone family, just an inventory thing, I guess. Territory booster tokens now correctly give the double territory standing when in Eden Grove. That was bugged. The rank 6 mentor chest. I actually wanted to look these up. I forgot to do that beforehand, because I think, yeah, that's okay. It's logging and harvesting and all that. It's just gathering trade skills, basically. Fishing, if you don't want to do fishing, this is one way to level this up. So these now give tier 5 research items instead of tier 4, which significantly increases the amount of generated XP. And their gold cost has also been reduced from 5,000 gold to 2,000 gold. Keep in mind, you're getting 1,500 per week from that, so you can level a skill that you don't want to do fairly quickly by doing this instead if you want to. I think that's nice. Adjusted the odds of rewards in the reward track, including making artifacts more likely to appear at rank 200 or higher. Adjusted in this case, as far as PTR tells us, means that they're not consistent in terms of where they are anymore. You don't unlock one at like 50, one at 100 or something. They're more like randomly unlocked at this point. And then, again, at rank 200 or higher, you have a higher chance to get them. I think this is better because you just kind of, you can just get anything like past rank 20. But on the other hand, it also means more RNG. So pros and cons to that one for sure. One day I'll get Pestilence, I guess. that's another struggle there. Fix an issue that caused certain items to not be upgradable at the kiln. Added all Legion Wild named item upgrade recipes at the Gypsum kiln. This is also relevant for, I think, the Savage Divide items, if I recall correctly. Fixed an issue that prevented flail abilities from rolling on flails granted from the PvP reward track. There's still a few other flails or shields that have issues with those perks. We'll see how long it takes to fix all of those. Added loot spawns for some of the rare perks that were introduced with Rise of the Angry Earth to make them slightly easier to obtain. They may change that again in the future to some degree. So Adamant can now be found in Elysian Wilds, Everfall, Great Cleave, Record, and Brimstone. So health perk is obtainable that way. At Hardened Crystal, the Enchanted Ward perk. I think that was initially not changed on PTR, but now it is definitely changed to be farmable in Cutlass Keys, Weaver's Fen, Shattered Mountain, and Restless Shore. So, if you want to have quick gold after the patch, you can go hunting for these. Of course, they will quickly drop in value, but at least initially, if you get lucky, you get lucky. Fix timeless shards so that they can drop from one boss per expedition. Yeah, I don't need to go for them all separately, but yeah, the last boss in general seems to be the one to drop them. And that means that Alluvium, Mal, and Scylla no longer drop them. There's some gear changes. So the new expansion foods now have proper recovery buff with a matching duration. The minimum gear score items no longer exist in that sense, so that's no longer in the lingo for certain things. Nathan's hammer had a war aim ability, even though it's a void gauntlet. I thought this was a joke. I thought this was like intentional, but old versions of this item keep the old perk, so yeah, you can have the meme. The new one has striking lightning. Fix an issue when you craft multiple items and one became named, you would not receive the other items. Very annoying. Fix an issue that caused the Fisherman's light armor to display without proper icons for male characters. Fix an issue that caused some lower tier items not to roll perks incorrectly, preventing them from rolling at the appropriate rarity. They've added the Endless Thirst to the loot table of the final boss in the mutated versions of Savage Divide. Obviously a fair bit harder to obtain than the Season Pass, maybe not. I mean, you can do an M1, I suppose, but I think it's still harder because you still have to get lucky. But then again, I think they have also increased the chances. I don't know if this actually went through, but their plan was to increase all the artifact drops to 20%, so it might make it a bit easier. They've also added Tumbler Feed Wrap to OPR caches. You can only loot each of these items once, and if you get them from Season 3, you cannot get them again. The Reinforced Orientalicum Bow Charm now has the correct name, which is so funny because there's so many other ones that are misnamed from these, and they never cared, but they care about this one. Well, fix an issue where tooltips would sometimes show scientific notations. Changed the name generation for PvP reward track accessories without unique names to include the attribute suffix. Fixed an issue that prevented the Government Faction Seal upgrade crafting recipe from appearing for rank 3. Game mode rewards. We're improving Outpost Rush rewards by guaranteeing that items we're given as a result of the participation are loot-based. Items from level 65 Outpost Rush reward caches will now also roll a slightly improved gear score range for players. Alright, and let's see what's happening here now. So, we originally wanted 3v3 arenas to be a more challenging space with additional value for the winning players, so we greatly improved the PvP XP and salts given by the mode in the expansion update. It was a successful change in that sense, but now our other PvP modes are suffering. We're reducing 3v3 arenas so they don't overshadow other modes as much. As a result, Outpost Rush and War will grant greater rewards. Players hitting the maximum contribution in War and Outpost Rush will now receive 5,500 PvP reward track and 4,000 Azoth salt. Outpost Rush now also gives 20 dark matter for maximum contribution players, and the lower contribution tiers have also been increased. The maximum reward given by 3v3 arenas has also been reduced to 1,200 XP and 500 salt. The other contribution tiers have also been updated in similar fashion. That's incredible. That is absolutely incredible. They got so much negative feedback for this. The entire feedback thread for this was just people saying, this is a very stupid idea. Just increase the other rewards and don't have arenas, because arenas are finally active. People are finally playing arenas even on servers where it's hard enough to find enough players for that. And they decided to go through with it. This must be a very personal vendetta of like one person that just doesn't like people not queuing for OPR quickly enough or something. Again, no other logical explanation here. You can not tell me that based on stats this is a good idea when in every other regard arenas are already the worst like rewards that you can get based on some like outlier of someone who wins like 20 games in a row or something. Like, oh, yeah, they would gain too much. Yeah, okay, cool. It's ridiculous. I don't know. I don't know what they're thinking with this. I don't know how they're not listening to any of the feedback in that regard. They could have at least given us a middle ground here. We'll scroll through. Maybe I'm missing something, but I'm pretty sure there's nothing more. Have said, okay, yeah, you're getting less, but then maybe you're getting something of a little bit more value in the caches. Maybe you get a very minimal amount of dark matter from arenas or anything like that, just to offset it just a tiny bit. Just to make it like a little bit more even, a little bit more fair. Doesn't seem like that's the case here at all. So, yeah. Very, very, very annoying, frustrating decision, where they are most certainly not listening to the community. Influence reward caches now roll items in a significantly improved gear score range that is in line with other PvP content for max level players. Influence race caches now also grant 10 dark medals for max level players. So, see, it's possible, right? You know, they're able to do it for influence races. Also, it's going to be interesting to see if all my old caches will now actually give useful rewards, because that would be great. Why is it possible to do that for influence races? Why it's not possible for arenas? What's the difference here? Anyways, improve the gears. Also, by the way, keep in mind that this is in context of like PvP track also being more random. So it can be like if you're trying to grind with arenas, it can take a really long time now to actually get the reward you want. And again, I'm pretty sure it might be just faster to spam faction missions. I'll probably test that. You know, I'll test that and I'll see how that goes. Improve the gear score from invasion cache items, also good, same as influence races. Refactored the way certain loot is provided to improve loot results for expedition bosses. This prevents issues where expedition bosses, including mutators, would not grant valuable loot, or would sometimes grant no equipment and very high number of things like craft mods. Fixed an issue that caused many items in the game to be unable to roll new perks, such as health or Enchanted Ward. This will most noticeable in PvP game mode rewards like Outpost Rush. This is big because the vast majority of them could not roll health. This could be especially interesting for brutish gear, which are a relatively cheap way to roll 700 gear score. I think you're able to roll with that. And if those patterns end up getting health added to them as a free roll that you can roll with a chance, that could be massive. Would make sense, right? If it's like the normal PvP gear and then the brutish gear and the brutish replica. So that could be very, very interesting for very cheap, good rolls. Then we have the aptitude chest. The dual crafting aptitude chest can now roll timeless shards. The expansion aptitude chest should now contain expansion materials instead of a mix of expansion and older. Expansion aptitude chest should no longer drop deprecated perks or tier 5 rare materials. The contents should be more consistent and unified and should match expectations as to what they should drop. When it comes to crafting, they've added the ability to craft research projects. These consume extra recipes, patterns, and music sheets you have lying around, and will grant bonus XP to the corresponding trade skill. Now, this sounded cool at first, but like the results that people found on PTR weren't impressive. I think there was not only were the values fairly low, but there was also a cooldown, I think, which means that like if you have a lot of music sheets, it still would take forever to work through all of them. So yeah, I don't know if they changed anything about that, but the initial version of this was not exactly great. Text term blue-blooded barb and demonology items are no longer bind on pickup. The hard rune upgrade path has been simplified and the associated crafting recipes are now less complex. This is very nice. Hard runes will no longer require items like feathers, saltpeter, and instead focus on the other resource in the recipes. And Gears Core 700 hard rune upgrade recipes have been simplified. Tier 5 refined resource requirements have been removed and a pass has been made on the overall resource requirement. I think there was some changes that made something slightly more costly, but overall I think this will be a lot better, especially the upgrade to 700 was cheaper. And again, we're also getting dark matter on a weekly basis now, so if there's any hard rune that you haven't upgraded at all, because the dark matter has been too hard to come by, that's going to be a bit less of an issue. Descriptions have also been updated for various items to indicate source, so the player knows where to find them when looking at the recipe. Prismatic Scarab tools now have their own category for mining, skinning, harvesting, and logging tools. Golden and Prismatic Scarabs recipes for the expansion items have had their Azoth costs reduced, so a player can now do 2 full crafts with a bank of 1000 Azoth at a tier 5 crafting station, which is ironic because the bank is now 2500 anyways. Increase the Azoth cost for perks on procedural expansion crafts from 15 to 150, so I guess they want to get some Azoth out of the economy as well, with a higher cap. I mean, you know, kind of even it out a bit. Fix an issue that prevented an 8 item reroll recipes from being searchable by name in the Gypsum kiln, which was kind of annoying. Fix an issue where Finisher had the wrong name at the kiln. The current trade skill used to make Jewelry Matrix now makes an Armor Matrix. The amount of XP the pile of bananas gave was bananas, has been adjusted to be more in line with our intentions. Once again, this was obviously an ongoing training tip on my Patreon, while it was still profitable. So if you want those early, you know where to go. But yeah, the piles that I have laying around now, yeah, so it's a good time. I have a lot of bananas. I think this is fine in so far that at least the bananas will return to their intended purpose of being used for recipes, for food. But then again, the price of bananas was already dropping, so I'm not sure. Yeah, it was a good run. This will affect the price of prismatic resources a little bit, I believe, since we'll kind of be going from way too many everywhere. So far that's somewhere like cheaper than what like Asmo and stuff used to be pre-expansion, to now you'll have to put a bit more effort into getting them, because I don't think it'll be particularly profitable to do that via furnishing. It's just like the double whammy for furnishing. First they like reduced the XP that you get massively, and then they gave us a new pathway through bananas, and they nerfed that too now, which I'm expecting to be once again a significant nerf, so that's not worth spam crafting those. But yeah, gonna be weird. My banana farms though, because like it's funny because the farming tip for everyone was go farm bananas so you can sell them, and then the crafting tip was buy the bananas so you can craft the resources for aptitude so you can get the prismatic materials. It's cool, whole economy ecosystem that's collapsing now probably, but it's funny. Like it had a good run. Removed an outdated achievement required for rune glass, and your players should be able to craft rune glass items without issue. Fix an issue that required a golden scarab in the player's inventory to see prismatic scarab jewelry recipes. Hidden recipes will now show as long as the player has at least one of the specified ingredients in the inventory instead of all the required specific ones. I think this means, for example, if you don't have like the timeless shards for an item or something, it will still show up, which could make things a bit more messy sometimes. I feel like they really need to find a way to declutter the crafting stations efficiently. But overall, at least it's not as annoying as why is this item not showing up? Oh, right, because I forgot the timeless shards and that in that storage or something. Or I don't have the right attribute mod or something. When it comes to gathering, we also have a few changes. Gathering items cannot be processed at refining stations, so strange ore, for example. And sorry. Gathering items that can be processed at refining stations, strange ore for example, are no longer limited to 3 items per day. Maybe this also means that works for like music sheets and stuff as well now, but anyways, this is nice, so you can actually clean those up quicker. I think that was mainly a thing to do before the expansion. They wanted to not have you be able to spam leveling too quickly through that, so they might limit that again with whatever next major update they come out with, but yeah, I think it's a good change. For now, at least, so it's less annoying. And reverted an unintentional change between resource spawn amounts for mithril ore. So that's going to be interesting. I don't know exactly which change that was. Adjusted the spawn rate for all tier 5.2 nodes to the original intended values, and now that the post-expansion resource rush has calmed down. Node spawn will be similar to other tier 5 resource nodes. That is going to be spicy. I think they were significantly quicker. I think they were like a third maybe of the time that they had on New World Database, roughly. So yeah, this could have some pretty lasting impacts on the economy. Again, I think this could affect, again, much like bananas, it could affect the prismatic resources. So they said that they were happy with the spot of prismatic resources and the prices they were at very recently, which surprised me because I thought, hey, they're kind of way too cheap. Maybe that was just to like not have us rush to the trading post and be like, oh, they are too cheap, but rather be like, okay, what's going on? And now suddenly it's like, by the way, we're changing all of this. So, yeah, I expect a pretty significant price increase in that department, especially because we're also going to be using the resources more in different ways with the winter event. So we're going to need more of them as well. When it comes to refining, players can now prospect silver, gold, and platinum ore to create a cache of gems. The better the ore, the higher the tier of the gems you can get. On PTR, those rewards weren't particularly good. It was just lower tier gems, even from platinum. So I'm not sure how good they will be on live. Territory standing gains have been adjusted for the expansion, refining, and crafting trade skills. Amounts have been lowered. Weaving will now generate standing. Notable fixes. Remove the mention of tier in the name of PvP reward tracks, potions packs, as it was a debug text, or looked like a debug text. Potion packs of the same type now share a similar name, but the player can reference the tier on the item itself. Fix an issue that prevented taximatized legendary fish from being salvageable. Fix an issue with the Varangian Lieutenant Kite Shield. Mining pick now displays stats data correctly. Fix an issue that prevents players from making the regeneration serum if the ingredients were in their storage. Fix an issue that caused the Ice of Life repeatable quest to display fewer rewards than offered. And fix an issue that caused Sapphire Gypsum to not drop from Mantaram in the Savage Divide. There are a bunch of mount fixes here. I am not gonna read through all of them. It's just basic fixes on the way they work and the camera works and whatnot, and what you can do while riding. I think most of them are not particularly major and not really affecting gameplay massively in any way, that unless they, you're using some weird exploit. So yeah, you can see them here, but that mainly is fluff, I feel like, with one exception, which is very sad. Fix an issue that caused the player to jump higher than normal when their mount jumped in a restricted zone. I think, I'm not sure if restricted zone is referring to what I'm thinking here, but I think this would also include like just walls in general. Maybe, I'm not entirely sure. It's a bit unclear, but like if it's just restricted in terms of where you can move, or an actual restricted zone, as in the areas where you get dismounted. But if this affects walls, then some cool parkour tech would go away with this. So we'll have to see. When it comes to seasons, we're going to have more Gleamite Medias compared to last winter conversions. And the wild stamp messaging at max stamps has been updated. I don't know what updated in this context particularly means. I hope it just means that if you are... Oh, wait, no, this is not what I thought it was. No, never mind. Fix an issue that caused players to lose fast travel points to Silver Crow's Nest. Fast travel points should be restored. I was hoping that this one meant that you don't get notifications all the time if you've completed the season pass, but that's something else. Then we have some UX stuff, UI stuff. Most of these, just some placements that have been adjusted, some UI thing in general, some like pages that were not displayed correctly. Not really anything major here for the most part. this one is, I think, somewhat relevant. Influence races will now be rescheduled if they're active during server maintenance, which was a bit annoying beforehand. And fix an issue that caused various buttons meant to take you directly to a particular tab in the store, not to work properly. So I didn't even know that was a thing. So maybe you can hotkey the... Oh wait, it's the in-game store, not the trading post. Never mind. Also not as cool as I thought. Remove the warning that occurred as you approached faction reputation cap. It never made much sense, to be honest. So fair enough. And price not displayed on the emotes listed in the main menu. That's this patch. A lot of decent stuff here, and then the very questionable arena stuff. Again, it doesn't look like there's any compensation for the changes they've done in that regard. Yeah, I don't know what to say on that, if other than they had all the feedback in the world for that, and they did not do anything about it, it seems, which is very frustrating and very irritating. So that's the main thing that affects me personally here. Other than that, again, Season 4, not exactly the biggest on content. There is some new content, there's a new expedition, but generally not all too much going on. Many other games that have a lot going on at the same time, so there's that at least. But it's worth dipping your feet into it, I believe, for on one hand for the weekly Gypsum reward for sure. I think that's absolutely worth it. And also for the winter event rewards, if you want to get those extra chromatics and all that. And on top of that, I think if you want to farm gold, that should be a lot easier now because, again, I believe that the value of all high-tier cooldown mats will like maxed, all the prismatic mats, will at least somewhat increase due to all the restrictions they're making to how it can be farmed. So that's a nice way to farm some gold back up now that the resources have been more restricted. And with Ori and Mithril on the same timer, that's also going to level certain things out. I think there's going to be some really weird bottlenecks. I think like especially wood and stuff could be in a very weird place after this if they really have these long cooldowns now. We'll see about it, but I do think, yeah, it's probably a better time to make gold now that people have some gold for free basically, and resources will be likely rarer than before. That's a good combination for the market at least. So you've got something to do if you've got nothing to do over Christmas. With that in mind, we're gonna end it here. Thank you very much for watching. If you are new to the channel by any chance, then consider subscribing and clicking the bell. And if you'd like to support me further and get the early trading tips, then feel free to do so on my Patreon. Thanks to all of my patrons who already do exactly that. And thank you for watching. Duke Sloth out.